And on our agenda, we have the report on salmon. Where's my agenda? Fisheries and Wild Salmon, Robert Chamberlain, and Regional Chief TG. Yeah.
Thank you, Harold. I could kick this off very quickly, and perhaps I'll go quite quickly. Certainly, we know the issues in regards to salmon and perhaps fisheries policy. And as the environment changes, we know the issues of climate change, warming waters, drought, habitat degradation, and cumulative industrial pressures on many fish species in this province. For our nations, salmon is not just a resource, it's a way of life. It's foundational to our governance culture, our food systems, our protein, and also our economics. So there will be several resolutions, and I believe Bob will do a deep dive there before you. And many of the mirrored resolutions were already passed by the Union of BC Indian Chiefs. They reflect alignment with First Nations Leadership Council and a shared recognition that federal fisheries policy must change if salmon are going to survive. In terms of the salmon allocation policy, right now is under review, and we're at the table. I think it's really important to understand that this review has existed because of the 1999 salmon allocation policy was found by the courts to be unjustified and infringe on First Nations rights to sell fish. And thanks to the Ahusit case, we're at the table, which we should have been out all this time. Canada was directed by the judges and by the court to correct that infringement. However, the public debate has been distorted by misinformation once again. Really, I think a racist rhetoric shared by the BC Wildlife Federation is suggesting that First Nations are trying to eliminate recreational and sports fishing or remove public access to fish. This is not what is being proposed, so it's really misinformation, and we need to really share the truth about what is going on. The review is about how harvestable salmon are allocated and managed. A central issue is the removal of recreational priority for Chinook and Coho, something the court specifically directed Canada to address. Removing priority does not eliminate recreational fishing. It requires a lawful allocation framework grounded in conservation and rights. More fundamentally, this debate cannot lose sight of the fish themselves. Allocation arguments are meaningless if we don't have fish stocks to rebuild and conserve. I also recently, in lobby efforts in Ottawa, had a recent meeting with Minister Thompson, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Just want to note, I've been in this position 9 years, and I think she's the 8th minister or 7th. Point being is that there's been a succession of a number of ministers, and it becomes frustrating that we always have to try to meet with them and bring them up to speed in terms of what our issues out here in British Columbia are, and also just in general. We emphasize that the misinformation about the salmon allocation policy and what is happening by a number of sports and recreation, and also BC Wildlife Federation, spreading this misinformation and really leading to the racist rhetoric that we're hearing in regards to the salmon allocation policy. And I really encouraged the minister to speak up in that regard. Also, there is a 5-year review of the Fisheries Act, where we continue to bring forward our position in regards to alignment of the United Nations Declaration Act, the Fisheries Act aligned with the United Nations Declaration Act, and within the action plan, there are 11 action plan measures that are specific to the Department of Fisheries and Ocean, and we need to do that work as well. We made it abundantly clear rebuilding wild salmon must be treated as a nation-to-nation priority, supported by long-term investment and First Nations-led governance. The salmon aquaculture transition plan, we also raised the importance of transitioning away from the open net pen aquaculture by 2029, given ongoing concerns about sea lice, disease transfer, and impacts on wild salmon. Any transition must be co-developed with First Nations and aligned with the United Nations Declaration Act, and avoid interim technologies that prolong ecological risk rather than resolve it. In closing, this moment is about rebuilding salmon during a time of an ecological crisis and environmental change, and it's about ensuring that fisheries governance in this province reflects First Nations rights, our responsibilities, and leadership moving forward. Thank you. Merci. On to you, Bob.
Gelikas lahamas lulukulatle. Nugu gelaga me guys and aka quikwasutinu kwapmis muskamag dowdinuk. Gelikas la silch lokulatle awina guis wheatla megans nanwakolas kwatnala. My traditional name is Gilagame. I'm from the Kwekwasu-Tinukwapmis people, which are part of the Musqueam Zaudenuch. And of course, I recognize that we're on the unceded territories of the Silk people. Grateful to be here, and thank you, Regional Chief and the staff for taking my late request for resolutions and for an opportunity to address the chiefs. I do have a PowerPoint, but I want to just open with a couple remarks that kind of set the table. And these are comments on the reality of today in relationship to salmon. And we have the First Nation Leadership Council has a terms of reference that came about from the All Chiefs Task Force. And that terms of reference is very clear that they essentially take on everything under the sun at provincial scale for political advocacy. And that includes fisheries, and it includes salmon. It doesn't include health, we all know that. But when you consider 7 individuals and the amount of work that is required to advocate politically for salmon across the province of BC, it's a daunting task to ask of anyone. And I've experienced over the past number of years what sustained and focused political advocacy looks like. When, as our regional chief mentioned, the announcement to ban fish farms, I spent a number of years informing nations of the impacts of fish farms to wild salmon. And during that time was able to identify over 120 First Nations that support the removal of this industry. But that was only the beginning. Made countless trips to Ottawa, met with every party that has MPs, including the Liberal BC MP caucus. I met with technicians, have done a whole series of relationship building with sport fishermen, commercial fishermen, wilderness tourism, and it takes a lot of time and energy to do that level of advocacy. And so when I consider the terms of reference for the Leadership Council, and like every organization doesn't have the resourcing that's necessary for the fulsome capacity, this is where the Wild Salmon Alliance has been able to provide that level of advocacy. Because we've brought hosts of chiefs from across the province to meet with the Minister of Fisheries. We met with the Minister in October in the Stalo territory to advance what wild salmon need. And so what Wild Salmon Alliance is going to pursue, and I'll get to the PowerPoint in just a moment to show the projects that we have been able to attain resourcing for, the capacity to work with willing nations that want to develop and populate what has been spoken of here today a number of times, which is our Indigenous laws. How do we develop them into a tool which we can advance at provincial scale? Keeping in mind when we had 120 First Nations support the transition of fish farms from the ocean, when that announcement was made, I heard 4 federal ministers in a row speak about that number. And I thought, what other issue that is related to the benefit of wild salmon can we collectively agree on to have that same kind of number, if not greater, to advance to the federal government to do what's right for our inherent rights, for our food security, and for the responsibilities we all hold to the watersheds and the territories in which we come from. DFO's behavior is a comfort zone of silos. And what I mean by that is they were able to offer Indigenous programs, and when it comes to regional or sub-regional efforts, we have ARAM bodies, Aboriginal Aquatic Resource Ocean Management. And I've sat on a board and still do for a National Indigenous Fisheries Institute, which is an ARAM body. I tried very hard to get our tribal council an ARAM body, but was unsuccessful. And I've spoken to nations across the province that are not interested in attaining that level of resourcing because it's felt it's an infringement on the sovereignty. So we have nations that have received funding, you have nations that didn't receive funding, and you have nations that don't want to have that kind of encumbrance upon the exercise of their inherent rights. So right there, it articulates an unevenness in terms of political advocacy and opportunity. And so with DFO's behavior largely to turn to the funded organizations, it's at the exclusion of unfunded nations. It's at the exclusion of nations that do not want to have that particular funding stream. And again, I'm not being critical of the organizations or the nations that are part of it. I'm being highly critical and pointed about DFO's behavior. And so that's what I see as the lay of the land after many years of being obsessed with salmon. And I take my hat off to all of you because I sat as chief for 14 years and I was on the Leadership Council for 9. I know the demands on your time. Everything under the sun, just as with the Leadership Council. And I've had the good fortune of being able to do this work where it's become a primary and sole focus for me to be able to live obsessively about what wild salmon need in terms of how do we move the government. So we'll move on after that incredibly long introductory remarks. I just see Dalton. Okay, Dalton, I asked Dalton to start a standing ovation later, so I'm glad that he's back in the room. Yeah, not yet, not yet. So the topics I want to present to you today, I got to pull mine up, my PowerPoint, because my eyes aren't all that good no more. Okay, now it won't go. Okay, so I want to talk about the two components that are in front of us for fish farms. One is the ISED transition planning process, which is, I'll get to it. And then the second component, a close cousin or down the hallway from ISED, is DFO consultation on regulations, conditions of license, and closed containment. I want to spend a bit of time on the most recent federal court ruling, the judicial review by Maui, which is a fish farm company, about the Discovery Islands decision. I want to talk about two projects we're quite excited to have resourcing to help nations with capacity, and that is the codification of Indigenous wild salmon laws, as well as looking at First Nation political unity on salmon, and a document that Cookbee Michelle Edwards of the Statlium Chiefs Council brought to my attention, the Intertribal Fisheries Treaty that was signed in 1989. So for the Open Net Pen transition planning process, the last phase was completed when the election was called, and like everything with government, it came to a grinding halt. Now, throughout every phase of this process, whether it was led by the DFO or led by ISED, they report out in a what we heard report. We still have not received that report, even though the consultation from ISED concluded when the election was called. I've been in touch with the senior ISED staff over the past months, and they confirm that there is still a process, but they have nothing to report in terms of when a start time will be identified, and that they're still reading over the submissions. So one of the resolutions that's for your consideration is insisting that this what we heard report be released. In terms of DFO consultation on regulations, conditions of license, and closed containment, if you're from a nation of the interior, this matters to your food security. And when I talk about the judicial review, I'll be able to explain why. But so when we think about the conditions of license and the regulations, when DFO made their announcement in June of 2024, the Wild Salmon Alliance engaged with 4 extremely reputable scientists to look at what DFO wrote and put in front of us. We only came up with 82 recommendations of change, 82 changes, because we asked the scientists, what would have to change in this set of regulations and conditions of license so it would actually protect wild salmon? And so many nations across the province and the Wild Salmon Alliance and the UBCIC tabled those 82 recommendations in the consultations of ICED. And they were supposed to start, I'm talking about the DFO now, not ICED, but DFO specifically. They committed that we were going to get on with consultations on these items in the spring and fall of 2025. Of course, this never happened. It's only, I think it was today, they finally appointed a deputy minister for DFO. And as of 2 days ago, DFO was only the 2nd federal department that never had a deputy minister. And so they were rudderless in terms of the administration and the activities there. The problem that we found as the Wild Salmon Alliance and the nations that we were able to work with in ICED is DFO point blank asked us, what's your definition of closed containment? We need to hear from you so we can develop an appropriate definition. And then the election was called. And then we had no consultations about that topic. Only to discover in the past couple of months that DFO has 5 different categories, including definitions of closed containment, on an industry reporting page online. So as is typical with government, they want to talk to us about something, but they've already made a decision and already put this up online for industry to abide by. So this shows me the environment within DFO has not changed. Even though we have this policy announcement to ban fish farms, we still have a struggle upon our hands. And so that was very troubling, and I've had a meeting with the Regional Director General about this and some of her senior staff. Now, the Maui decision, Discovery Islands, it's around the Campbell River area, and the minister decided not to reissue the 18 or 19 fish farm licenses there. And I was able to represent or negotiate for 3 of the 7 First Nations, so I've got firsthand knowledge of this consultations. And there was an initial judicial review. It included a fish farm company and the First Nations that were supportive of the industry in that area, and they were unsuccessful. Maui went on for another one, and they had 2 overarching arguments in the case. Now this, I want to say, this is an important case in terms of tools that are existing for the government to look after our wild salmon. So they said the minister's decision was made in a procedurally unfair manner, that the minister's decision was unreasonable. Well, for procedural fairness, the minister's decision was unfair for 2 reasons, and this is what the industry said. They did not provide notice or opportunity for Maui to respond to the non-DFO science. Non-DFO science. And then the second part of the procedural fairness argument was that they breached Maui's legitimate expectations for the process within DFO for obtaining the science advice that the minister ultimately followed, which was non-DFO science. Now, the minister's conclusions at Discovery Islands, this is unreasonableness from the industry's perspective, that the minister's conclusions that the Discovery Islands is unique relied on incorrect and unjustified findings. Now, I can tell you, Hamalko First Nation, who I worked with in these consultations, had a Johnstone Straits Butte Inlet Marine Use Plan. signed off by DFO, signed off by the provincial government. And it clearly defined and articulated the uniqueness of Discovery Islands. And so that was extremely useful because of the highly stratified nature of Discovery Islands, the water there. So whatever happens in the upper water column stays there, where your Chinook and your coho spend the better part of the year in Discovery Islands area. Again, that's information from DFO. The minister also failed to justify her refusal to her department's advice that to relicense all the farms. So here we have a minister that's open to science, that's not spoon-fed from DFO, which is spoon-fed by industry. She was open to hear all science. And then the department said, look, minister, you need to reissue all these licenses, and she didn't. And then the industry spoke that the minister did not meaningfully account for the central issues and concerns raised by Maui. Generally speaking, the Court of Appeal systematically dispensed with each of these arguments of procedural fairness and reasonableness, with emphasis that Maui was well aware of the independent science that contradicted DFO's conclusion that fish farms in the Discovery Islands pose no more than minimal risk to wild salmon. Now we have to appreciate that the DFO essentially solely relies upon the Canadian Science Advisory Secretariat, or CSAS, for their science. Well, in the Discovery Islands consultation, we established and we asked the top person in DFO aquaculture, and he reluctantly said yes to the question about industry's over-involvement. Because every fish farm company and every stakeholder that supports them are involved in developing a terms of reference, who else is selected to review the science, and who does the final peer review. It's pretty much like being able to mark your own homework. And so that's what DFO stands on. And this is what we communicated to the minister in a sustained manner about the falseness of CSAS objectivity, and working with people like Dr. Andrew Bateman from the Pacific Salmon Foundation, who participated in 4 of the 9 risk assessments. And so it's not simply an opinion of being dug in and not liking an industry, it's based upon actual facts, like the legal review that I'm doing now. The reasonableness, the federal court thoroughly rejected the arguments that the industry put forward. And this is the part that I find really exciting in terms of protection of salmon generally, because it offered from the federal court a great articulation of the precautionary principle, and further confirmed the minister's ability to use that principle in fisheries management decisions, particularly where there were serious conservation concerns. So this ruling empowers all of us to bring forward our laws, our understandings, and counter what industry or the government may want to do. And we have something that shows that in the absence of concise science, to err on the side of caution. Geez, this is taking longer than I thought. I should have shortened it up. Okay, but the court emphasized, in light of the dire consequences that the declining stock of wild Pacific salmon could have for the rights of First Nations, more broadly for the economy and social fabric of BC, it was understandable for the minister to have a low level of tolerance for the risk posed by the Atlantic salmon farms in Discovery Islands. So that, I want to be able to just show you that the minister, Joyce Murray, made the right decision. I want you to understand why she made that decision. It was based upon steady, consistent political advocacy, reviewing documents, reviewing things over and over and over again, and with MPs, building momentum within the government. And that's what I think is one of the reasons it was successful. And it's that kind of unity and ability to advocate single-mindedly that we don't have today. in terms of the Wild Salmon Alliance projects we're going to do, we have a multi-year project because we know developing or working with a First Nation to codify their Indigenous laws as it relates to salmon is not a one-off meeting. That it will require engagements with leadership, with community, with knowledge holders, culture holders, tradition holders. But we're able to bring a legal perspective, legal capacity to the nations that want to participate. And we want to target nations, because I know there are various views of what a nation is. I'm from the Kwikwasutinukwakwamis Indian band. We are two nations in one band, because each of our components has an origin story. And that's just how that's how we view the world. But I know that that's not the same everywhere. And so looking at the scarcity of resourcing and the number of nations to reach out to, we set a soft goal of reaching out to 2 nations that view themselves as a collective and thinking we can accomplish more than one set of laws. The target is to get 2 or 3, maybe 4 if the proposal comes through next week, we're hoping. And what we want to be able to do once that work is accomplished is identify the commonalities between the First Nation laws from here and up north and so on. And then we have a credible provincial scale First Nation law that we can then advocate for proper and appropriate protection that is based upon our inherent rights and the way that we look after our territories. And this would serve, and I'm hoping that when this gets off the ground and we're working, that this begins that journey of political unity to bring leadership together to discuss this issue without having another organization's longevity as the primary driver. And what I mean by that is when we had the gathering in Kelowna in October, I witnessed executive directors from organizations not really being all that supportive because it would take work from their organizations within the silo. And I think given this crisis that is salmon across the province, we need to have that province-wide perspective. And if I'm wrong, I hope you come up and just tell me I'm wrong. I'm open to that. The political advocacy part, we want to build upon that First Nation Political Salmon Summit that occurred, because we did have leadership in the room. We did have positive voices speaking about the need for it, but it's a conversation I want to help facilitate. And it's not just myself, it is the Wild Salmon Alliance. And I'm mindful of a meeting that I had with the Statlium Chiefs Council, it must have been 1.5 years ago, and one of the elder Cookby said, we really need to have unity with the coastal First Nations. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, why do we not have unity on this issue when we need to talk about protection and rebuilding? Not allocation, protection and rebuilding. Because I know that we all hold different responsibilities for essentially the same thing, making sure the rivers have salmon for our people, our culture, and our traditions. So we're quite fortunate that the existing First Nation Wild Salmon Alliance members, one chiefs that I speak to fairly often, already span across British Columbia, from up north to the interior to the Fraser Valley and out onto the coast. Right, that I'm very fortunate to have a group of chiefs that I can reach out to and make sure I'm not out in left field all by myself, because I've been there before. So we're planning a second political gathering. It'll be later in spring. We're just waiting again to find out if we've been successful in our proposal, and where it will be just solely chiefs gathering together to talk about how do we align politically to advocate in a sustained and focused manner. And this, the Wild Salmon Alliance introduced at the gathering in Kelowna the document that Cookby Michelle Edwards brought to my attention, the Intertribal Fisheries Treaty, and that's on the next slide. It was developed in the 1980s. And of course, quite often I'm the last guy to learn something. I just learned about this year, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when I read it. I thought, this is epic. And so it was largely the nations of the Fraser, but the Wild Salmon Alliance and its vision of political unity sees this expanding beyond the Fraser to look to have representation from across British Columbia in this agreement, whether we call it a treaty, whether we call it a salmon accord, whatever the chiefs decide. But what we want to be able to do, or what has occurred already, the Wild Salmon Alliance Legal Counsel took a look at the ITFT as it was from 1989 and reformatted it. Did not remove any of the pieces that were in there, but strengthened it with current case law, political commitments, UN declaration, DRIPA. So it's updated in that regard, so we have the most current political landscape folded into this document. And when I look at that list of nations that signed it in 1989, there's a good number of those signatories that are already active members of the Wild Salmon Alliance. And I believe the Wild Salmon Alliance has already identified an individual that has very deep knowledge of the ITFT, and we're going to approach this person to take on the work of reaching out to all the nations that were signatory, but also to reach out to nations that weren't contemplated as part of that work. And there's my contact info. I'm available every day of the week to talk about salmon. Help me so my honey doesn't just have to listen to me talk about salmon. But I hope that this presentation is not seen as adversarial to the Leadership Council or to the First Nation Fisheries Council or to any other ARAM body. It's just I see that there's a space that we could fill collectively to advocate for salmon across the province. And I can think of nothing stronger than in First Nations Indigenous laws as the absolute foundation for that, and an agreement of nations from across the province to work together to define what that will look like. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, you should ask about his shirt ironing wisdom. He changed my life. And I share it like it's elder wisdom now. If you ever wonder why he wears jackets like that, he says, so you just have to iron this part of your shirt. And I was like, why did I miss that, right? But the last thing I'll say, with all of this future-looking goals and project, I have no interest in building the Wild Salmon Alliance beyond anything that it is today. This is not an empire building. It's making use of the little space inside the governments that we've made in the fish farm fight. And how do we keep that door open and bust in with even more chiefs with a stronger set foundation to advance what's needed? And in terms of the ITFT, want to gather leadership from across the province so the conversation can be had, so the course can be set to go forward. Dalton, now would be a good time.
We do the wave.
Thank you, Dalton. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Bob. We are at 3:05. I'm going to dispense with questions, Q&A with Bob. We have 10 minutes before the designated time to turn to closing remarks. As you see, we're presenting a gift to Bob. BCAFN presents a gift to Bob. We have 4 on-time resolutions and 2 late resolutions. Number 5, it starts the fisheries resolutions, and we've created an omnibus on that. We'll pick up number 15 following that, and with your permission, I'll check in at 3:15 if we stop or go into carry on. So I'll turn your attention to Omnibus Resolution 5, which was circulated earlier, and that addresses in your package Resolutions 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And in the omnibus, they're named A, B, C, D, E, and F. I have a mover, Chief Jerry Jack. As a mover, I do need a seconder I see Chief John Paul. You have on the omnibus the list of those resolutions. I'm not going to read all the therefore whereases, or therefore be it resolved, but I will tell you what the main point of them are. Original number 5 or 5A affirms that DFO must conduct early, well-resourced, good faith consultations on the 2026 agriculture regulations and closed containment definitions before final decisions. Calls out DFO's use of undefined or previously rejected containment categories. Directs BCAFN to seek funding for a First Nations-led engagement process and regulatory impact. Number 6 or 5B. Rejects semi-open, semi-closed, or flow-through containment as acceptable transition options. They continue to discharge waste and pathogens into marine environments. Reaffirms support for land-based closed containment only with free, prior, and informed consent. Calls on Canada and BC to cease funding or approving semi-open systems before the 2029 deadline. 5C or previous 7 demands immediate unredacted release of the DFO ISED What We Heard report on open net pen transition. Calls for a restart of the transition planning process post-release, grounded in precautionary science, Indigenous knowledge, and First Nations rights. 5D, previous 8, frames wild salmon recovery as a nation-to-nation priority, essential to reconciliation, food sovereignty, and climate resilience. Calls for formal federal provincial recognition and First Nations-led co-governance of salmon rebuilding, and directs BCAFN to advocate for a comprehensive First Nations-led wild salmon strategy. 5E, previous 9, calls on DFO to immediately ban midwater and bottom trawling in BC Pacific coastal waters. Trawling causes irreversible ecosystem damage and contributes to carbon emissions. Calls for co-development of marine management policies with free, prior, and informed consent, investment in marine IPCAs, and First Nations-led guardians and monitoring programs. And 5F, previous 10, directs regional chief to demand immediate removal of all open net pen Atlantic salmon farms from BC's Pacific coast. Pending removal, calls for mandatory continuous video monitoring at aquaculture operators' expense and real-time data access for neighboring First Nations. Demands aquaculture regulatory regimes align with UNDRIP and DRIPA, including free, prior, and informed consent. Is there a need for discussion of any of the resolutions in the omnibus? Is there a need for discussion? Seeing or hearing none, let us move to the question. Any opposition to this omnibus? I like to refer to this as Chief Mitchell's homnibus resolution. I don't know how many resolutions you could put on it. Any abstentions? Seeing or hearing none, Omnibus 5 is adopted by acclamation. Thank you. We pick up from the table draft resolution 15, call for essential services designation for health and cultural services for residential school survivors and intergenerational survivors. Originally, we've got a new mover, which is Cookby Helen Henderson, and Chief Mariah Charlson has seconded it. I just want to make sure, Chief, I see Mariah there online and Chief Henderson in the room. Essentially, I'll refer you to there, whereas E, essential services designation is outlined in the Public Service Labor Relations Act and identifies services necessary to protect public health, safety, and security. Essential service designation confirms stable long-term funding to ensure reliable service delivery. And so we'll move to the therefore be it resolved that the BCAFN Chiefs and Assembly call on all levels of government to declare all health and cultural services for Indian residential school survivors and intergenerational survivors to be classified as an essential service. The BCAFN Chiefs and Assembly call on Canada to fulfill the legislative and international obligation to address the critical and unique needs of First Nations by ensuring the permanent availability of health and cultural supports to uphold First Nations wellness holistically. The BCAFN Chiefs and Assembly call on ISC and CERNAC to conduct a review of their obligations from recent class action settlements related to residential schools, day schools, and Indian hospitals and ensure that health and cultural supports remain available for claimants on a permanent basis. And for the BCAFN Chiefs and Assembly, direct the Regional Chief and BCAFN staff to advocate in favor of equitable, sustainable, and permanent funding to First Nations organizations who administer health and services and cultural services for Indian residential school survivors and intergenerational survivors. I look to the mover and seconder to see if there's a need for discussion. Microphone 21.
Wade Cookwight of Cookbeat, Helen Henderson, West Chileskin First Nation. I would like to, I support the motion. I certainly am a firm believer in wraparound supports at every level in our lives. Moving forward, I think I just want to make an addition or an amendment to the whereas clause to L. And if I could just read that out, Chair, then you'll know. The current fiscal approach for Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, CERNAC, focuses on essential services as the basis for priority funding. Currently, organizations such as Southern Lalem Treatment Center and the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, IRSSS, are not recognized as an essential service. Cook's-Jam.
Thank you. So adding Southern Lalem. Thank you very much. To the seconder.
Yes, I approve of the friendly amendment of including Southern Lalem.
Awesome. Is there a need for further discussion? Microphone 13.
Gathwala, Justin Kane, Squilo. Just listening to your conversation this morning in regards to what Mary TG was talking about, it makes me, and I know back home we've been advocating and we've been writing letters to the prime ministers about infrastructure funding for our healing centers, and I don't see it in this resolution. And what Mary talked about was preventative dollars, but there was no infrastructure dollars at that time. So I would ask for some sort of amendment to add also infrastructure dollars to help build our healing centers. Cookstrom.
Microphone 21.
Hello. Oh. Sorry. Cookbeat, Helen Henderson, West. Cook's-Jam, Cookbeat, I am in agreement.
Okay. All right, so then Chief Kane just released the hour. So what you're looking for is maybe a phrase, because I think it would go in, therefore be resolved 4. Maybe at the end. So, and infrastructure dollars. Is that sufficient just to say to that? Okay. So we'll just add at the end of 4 and infrastructure funding. Okay? Capital infrastructure, thank you. Good? Good, Maria? Chief Maria? Good. Is there a need for further discussion of this resolution as amended? adding Tulsa Ladle, and capital infrastructure funding. Seeing nothing further, let's call the question. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Any abstentions? Resolution 15 is adopted by acclamation. We are at 3:15. On our agenda, it says we will turn to the closing address. I would need your permission to proceed with the remainder 16, 17, and the two lates, or do we set those aside through the normal process and turn to the closing? Any opposition to continuing? Yeah. I know there's flights. With your, any opposition to tabling the remainder of the final two and the two lates for action by the executive? I see Chief Ed John. I know you have a late resolution there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the resolution that I'm proposing is a very simple one. Is that you heard Attorney General Sharma say that BC has filed an appeal on the Gitzel and Hadasat court case, and the resolution that I'm proposing is simple. It says that First Nations call on the Government of Canada to intervene in support of Gitzel and Hadasat in the appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. And the short history is that Canada has never stood up on First Nations side ever. And this is the call on them. And in relation to the nature of the relationship that I read from Sparrow, that the nature of the relationship within the government and Aboriginals is trust-like, not adversarial.
Grant Chief, if you don't mind, I'll perhaps try one thing here. So we do have two on-time resolutions which have been in the package and are pretty straightforward, and we have the two late resolutions which have been circulated. You've had those all day, I think, today. I would ask for, if you're willing, unanimous consent to adopt the two remaining on-time resolutions and the two late resolutions. Do I have unanimous consent in the room to do so? Do I have unanimous consent online to do so? Seeing no objections, then all four of those resolutions are adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. With that, we turn to the closing remarks. Regional Chief TG.
Harold, once again, thank you for your good chairmanship to get us through with the resolutions. I'll keep my comments short. I do have to catch a flight and head home, go see my wife. Matter of fact, I should be thanking her. Thank my wife, Rena Zatorski, for allowing me to do this work. And I've been a chief of some sort for the last 17 years. And really important to acknowledge our loved ones that allow us to come here to do these type of sessions and do this a very important work, as you will see, in the discussions with the Attorney General and also the Mirror Minister about the importance of the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples and all the work. Acknowledge, the likes of our own. One of our own, Grand Chief Edward John, and the development of the Declaration internationally, and the likes of Wilton Littlechild. It was to recognize our rights. It was to bring some semblance of justice to our Indigenous peoples in this unjust world. So it's really important to uphold what is the commitment from this provincial government and the federal government to uphold the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People as legislation. I want to thank my staff back here. And some of this, I couldn't do it without them. And it's, they made me look good. My knowledge keepers, my representatives, Women's Council, my youth, representatives, all those that are part of some of the committees at the AFN and other provincial organizations that represent the BCAFN. I want to thank you all. The next meeting, the AGM, is October 14th, 15th, 16th? October 14th, and that is there's a number of positions that will be open, including this one. And you guys keep asking me, are you going to run in? Are you going to run again? Safe to say my name will probably be on that ballot. So once again, I'll take this if you allow me to carry on this very important work. It's been an honor and a privilege to stand here, and as we remember yesterday, this important place, Chief Gabriel Penticton, the birthplace of the Assembly of First Nations that was born out of the National Indian Brotherhood. And back then, whether it was the NIB or the AFN, there was a groundswell of our people at that certain moment in time that we had to rise up and had to come together and fight for what is right, fight for our people, fight for justice. And it seems like it's fitting that we're here once again, that perhaps we're here at that moment in time because we're fighting for DRIPA, fighting for our fish, fighting for everything that we're talking about, our children taking over jurisdiction. And in the context of this world, this ever-changing, crazy world, as we see more pressures, issues rise up in the general public, and we're seeing it, we're hearing it. You see it in public discourse on social media, and in the public. I'll just share with you that I was in the grocery store the other day, and an individual came up to me and started just letting me know his view on development and on pipelines, and said I was wrong. I didn't get into an argument with him. I just said, carry on, walk on. And you don't know what you're talking about. The point is that there's more of this coming, more and more. That the racism, if it's not called out, it's going to happen. And we've seen it. We've seen it in institutions, schools, police forces, hospitals. And that is part of as leaders in this part, is part of our job too, to call it out as well, and also the governments to call it out. So it's very difficult times, but nevertheless, I'm more than willing to fight for what's right, just as you are. So with that, I want to thank you all, and thank you for being here for this very important meeting, and to have discussed these very important matters in regards to the, I believe, 21 resolutions. We have a mandate and also direction to carry on with that very important work. So thank you all, and I really want to acknowledge the work of Harold over the last couple of days, and I do have a gift for you. So thank you all. Safe travels home. Merci.
Good luck getting on the plane. Oh, that's awesome. With that, then, let us call the knowledge keepers forward to have the concluding protocol. And we'll invite the Chief Gabriel, you want to come? It is your territory. We'll welcome you also to the front here.
Oh, okay.
Some final remarks, Chief?
Oh.
Then we'll...
Well, thank you.
I just want to thank you all, the leadership from throughout the province, for all the hard work that you're given the responsibility to carry out. There's no doubt we're in for some challenging times, and it's through your dedication and your commitment and in being mindful for our future generations, that this work needs to continue. And we really need to continue on and let the government of Canada and the government of the province and all citizens know that we're not going anywhere. This is our land, and we will do what we have to do to protect our title and rights. I want to thank Harold for his amazing job in keeping us online. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I do want to ask the Creator to bring you home safely to your families, and hopefully this weather is going to continue on through the weekend, so you'll have a beautiful, enjoyable weekend. Wailimnip, and thank you for coming into our community. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and please come back and visit. Thank you.
To our chief, regional chief for the Knowledge Keepers, Harold, our AFN staff, and to each and every one of you, share this paddling song as a prayer, a blessing to each one of you that in your travels, that you're safe, that you arrive home safely, and that your families are safe. We have the water out there, so you can imagine being on a canoe. Ho, eria, oh, ho, eria, ho, eria, ho, eria, ho. Ho, eria, oh, ho, eria, ho, eria, ho, eria, ho, to eat a little high tip.
I want to thank the leadership for sharing your leadership time with us. I want to acknowledge and thank your families for sharing their family time so that you can be here with us. That's so important. I want to thank the support team, seeing them, standing beside them in the many, many, many hours of organizing and making sure that the assembly that we have is done in a good way, and that you got the info and you got the support to do your work. It's not an easy job sharing worldview. We've been doing that now for decades, but now it's starting to get a little clearer. Through the resolutions, through the work and the commitment that you make, the voice that you give out there, painting what our worldview looks like, and putting aside the colonial hats that we were forced to wear. We're now putting on our own hats. This is who we are. This is our laws. This is our way. And it's so beautiful to see and hear. Sitting on the sideline is a little different for me. I wanted a red lanyard when I came in, and I said, God, I miss that red lanyard. But at the same time, it's really good to sit and listen and understand and learn a little bit more about the work that I'm doing and the work that you're doing, and to really appreciate and to share with you that don't forget yourself and don't forget your family. 9 years in leadership, I forgot who my family was. and now the last 3 years reconnecting with family. So take care of yourselves and remember to spend that family time, all that you got, with them. Hug them and say you love them. And safe trip home. White Limlet.
Oh, I guess it's me.ถึงความมันทอมีอับเอลสวัสเสียมทศควิตสทศโยคควาชิตเสียมตะคูปีสเนสควาลวันสวีเสียมตะวุฒชัยโยน้ำชับโทก First of all, our respected elders, matriarchs, chiefs, kupis that are here in the room, thanking our hosts, thanking you for allowing us in your beautiful territory, those here in the room and those online, really offering you safe journey home in your canoes. I'm a canoe person, so I'm in an ocean-going canoe because it's wide body. That's all I can say. Really grateful for each and every one of you. Again, RC and BCAFN staff and all of you, because again, we can't do what needs to be done. We are the voice for our communities, and thank you. And my cousin, she's gone home already. A warrior, yes, I'm ready to go to war, because that's who I am. You know, I'll continue to stand up for not only my rights, but for everyone's rights as Indigenous people. So thank you. Chinkwamantomi, Cookstem, Machicho, Hi, Cookstem, Kamsangdawa, Hi, Sheshe, Kamsandawa, Hawa, Gamma, and all those other languages. Merci, mucho gracias, adios, amiga.
One last thing, just shout out to my board of directors. Thank you for all the work. Cook P, Chief Sam, Chief Jerry Jack, Brian Asu, and Chief Maureen Lugie. If you indulge me, one last request. If all the chiefs and proxies go to the side here, we'll take a group photo. Group photo? Okay, let's go. Very quickly, because I got to catch a flight.
Your prize.
Yeah.
As you're doing that.
While you're doing that, we've got many prizes to give away. So how many do I draw?
16. Oh my God. To be here. No.
I'm going to call out numbers on the white tickets, your vendor tickets. We have prizes for you.
Their names in the back.
Oh, I got names. Sorry. Kimmy. That's all it says. Deb Crow. Preston Gabriel.
Wave if you're here.
Diane Francois. Cookby Francois. Ben Pierre. Young counselor. Pierre. Young counselor. Mark Hunt. Sempelan Arasum. Kathy Doss. Greg Gabriel. Councillor Don Francois. Kim Montgomery? Oh, no.
Kim's here.
Good. Kylea Ward. Michelle Green.
Annette.
Barbara Adam William. Shanna Thomas, she had left.
I'm here online. Wouldn't miss out on a good door prize.
Clarissa Wallace. Jeanette Jules. Four.
So it's pretty much done. Okay. If they're all here, it's all done. I know.
Yeah, that's 16 if we got it.
Got to pick something, or somebody gives me something.
Which one are you?
And then let's do the Wheel of Fortune as well. You got them all? You can take them.
She has it all numbered. The door prize.
Oh, they're all numbered? Okay. So while she's doing that, I'm gonna.
Yeah, take those with you, just in case, so they're all the numbers. Alkina, Alec, you won the Spinning Wheel of Fortune, the $2,000 flight certificate. Justin?
Sorry. I am still going through this. I don't have the prizes. Okay. So I believe, or you forgot?
That went good.
Still writing